So ever since the Gear Factory wheeljack review, check that out by the way, I've been pretty interested in getting into Prime toys, by way of knockoffs of course. I'm not in the position to track down the original molds. Since then, I've accumulated 2 other Prime figures, and I gotta say these are very cool, but also show a bit of jank. Well, let's discuss that. Greetings people of YouTube, I'm Screaming Star, and today I'll be reviewing the Gear Factory Giant Hammer and the APC Toys Dark Master 2.0, also known as Transformers Prime Bulkhead and Megatron. Now, I know I said these two are from different companies, but I'm pretty sure it's just the same company with a different name, so please forgive me if I designate both of them as APC toys throughout the rest of this video. So these are Bulkhead and Megatron, the big, bulky, lovable bruiser, and the massive, maniacal tyrant. These are unofficial reissues or knockoffs of their original Transformers Prime figures. I was planning on reviewing them individually, but then I realized that I got so much stuff to review that I might as well clog these two in one video. Not the last time this will happen, believe me. So just like the wheeljack I reviewed prior, they've got some pretty cool looking boxes with nice foam trays on the inside to preserve 2 pretty good looking figures. Well, more like one really good and one looking figure, but I'll save that for later. For now, let's talk about the plentiful amount of accessories that they come with. Starting off with Bulkhead, he comes with a pair of wrecking balls and a pair of arm cannons for a variety of attacking methods. You can attach them to the figure just by flipping down his wrist and plugging the weapons in that way, giving you the illusion that they've transformed out of his forearms. I adore the silver finish on the wrecking balls, and whilst the arm cannons do not have any kind of painted pizzazz, they still look mighty as hell. Also, these side guards are on hinge joints so that they don't get in the way. If you don't want these cannons displayed like this, you can allegedly attach them on his shoulders, but that never seemed to work for me. Or you can bring in this giant stick and combine them into the Forge of Solus Prime. Basically a big ass hammer. Pretty cool feature that wasn't present on the original toy, but why would I use this when the set itself comes with an honest to goodness Forge of Solus Prime, complete with rotating drums. Lovely. To attach it, just take off this part, put it in his hands, and put the part back in. Finally, for his robot mode, you get a human girl. What? This is actually Bulkhead's partner in the show, Miko Nakadai. Despite not being posable, this is a pretty neat and well-made minifigure, which I appreciate the inclusion of. Helps that I actually like Miko as a character. Put her next to Bulkhead and Janky and this is rad. What's also rad would be Megatron's accessories. He comes with 2 blades and a fusion cannon to replicate the setup that we mostly see him with in the show. Or you can make him dual wield the blade, which is pretty epic. Integration process should be self-explanatory. The blades are sculpted fairly well and even painted nicely, but why is the shade of gray plastic like this? I'll talk more about it later. The fusion cannon, meanwhile, looks stellar. The metallic purple paint is to die for, and the silver is also nice. It's supposed to have a light up feature, but I can't access it because I don't have the necessary battery, so I'm sorry. Finally, for Megatron, and what is probably my favorite accessory out of this lot so far, you get the Dark Star Saber, or Dark Saber, or whatever you want to call it. This looks incredible! The glossy black paint, the metallic purple, the edginess of it all. I just cannot get enough of it. Plug it into his hands in the same way you made Bulkhead hold his Democracy Manifest, and it instantly makes any pose you get him into even cooler. It's also great for other figures to borrow, totally not foreshadowing. Finally, as far as storage goes, there is a hitch accessory that you can put on his back, and in turn put the saber in there. Wow, these figures come with some great arsenal, but a good accessory count isn't quite indicative of a good figure. So how do the actual figures themselves fare in terms of quality? Starting off with Bulkhead, he's definitely a win when it comes to the aesthetics. I mean, look at him, he's just so big and buff and breathable. Okay, maybe not that last part, but he really looks like he's leapt off the screen and into my review station. His head looks amazing. Love the silver paint here, and he even has light piping just like his wrecker buddy. The chest looks great too, with many different overlapping panels somehow creating a cohesive looking torso. I mean, there's like 5 different components here. The front windshield, the side windshields, the hood, the parts under the hood, the bumper, your mother, and the limbs look as good as they need to, despite a slightly inaccurate wheel kibble on his stubby legs. Even his solidity seems pretty good at first. So, what's the issue? Well, it all starts when we look at the back of the figure. Looks-wise, again, it's really not a problem. Sure, those wheels are technically kibble, but they are a part of the design. Nothing to get frustrated over. But frustration is definitely the word that comes to mind when it comes to the construction. One whiff of air, and oops, the back panel pops off. Try to attach it again, and See where I'm getting at here? Also, without this panel, the rest of the figure is spaghetti. You see, it's what's keeping these sidecar panels intact, and without it, he's practically a quarter of a way to becoming his alt mode. It may not seem like a big deal, but when you actually feel it in hand, it really dampens the fun factor. Wheeljack's hips being loose is annoying, but it's not figure damning. Just be careful with posing him and you're good to go. This though, not as easy to forgive, I'm afraid. But that's really the one big issue I have with this figure, save for a slightly lacking posability to his beefy nature. It's still overall a good representation of the character that I quite like to look at and play with. Now, Megatron, on the other hand, he kind of has the opposite problem. He feels pretty dang good. I did have to tighten a few screws here and there out of the box, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. He comes off as a pretty well-built figure. The only annoying loose bit is this back kibble thingy, which whilst it is a hassle to handle, it's not integral to the stability of the figure, so I'm not gonna be as harsh on it as I was with Bulkhead's loose panel issue. So, what's the jank this time? Well, the aesthetics. The sculpt work here is masterfully done. The shapes just look dead on to that CGI model. Even the paint, what amount there is, looks pretty nice. Hints of silver here, metallic purple there, you know the drill. So, I gotta ask something. What's up with the plastic color? Look, I don't think this is as bad as the RED version, because that thing's just straight up trash, and it's helped by the fact that this figure is actually made of solid plastic. But you've already done and give this figure the metallic paint it deserved several years ago, and that was the original version as opposed to this, which is the 2.0 version. What's the point of a 2.0 release if it doesn't improve upon the original? Again, I don't think the plastic color they used here is horrendous, but compared to what I could have gotten, it definitely leaves a bit to be desired. Sure, the head sculpt's great, as well as the rest of the body, but under the shiny, plasticky gray, it just ends up feeling washed out. Especially so when I compare this to the incredibly sexy Byway Revenge of the Fallen Megatron, let alone his 1.0 predecessor. Bottom line, I don't hate this robot mode, but I definitely am underwhelmed. Another kind of underwhelming part about both of these figures, not just Megatron, would be their posability. I mean, it's par for the course with most Prime figures, so it's not something I can be too harsh on. And hey, despite this fact, the amount of posing here is really not terrible. I'll start off with Bulkhead since he is the least posable of the two. Head is on a ball joint, but it really just gives a swivel motion. Also, the light placement here is amazing. Shoulders rotate 360, can move out that far. Butterfly joint going back due to the transformation. Double hinge joint at the shoulder pads. Really tight bicep swivels. Over 90 at the elbow. Wrists can hinge inwards. Not really a point of posability, but it's really cool how these arm guards are spring-loaded. Nothing at the waist, and the legs are really limited. Forward that far. Back that far, can do the splits, thigh swivel, 90 at the knee, really nice fracture joints by the way. No ankle pivot, but the heels and the toes can move down like that. Not terrible, he's just really chunky. Now with Megatron, he pretty much has the exact same amount of joints except for hinge joint here for the transformation, double jointed elbows again due to the transformation, wrist swivel, a slightly better range at the hips, knee swivel instead of a thigh swivel, ankles moved down and up a bit, ankle pivot again just a little bit, and the heel is on its own joint, so that can help with stability. Despite them not having as many joints as a modern figure would, I'm still gonna get them to strike some poses. Not a bad montage for some 10-year-old molds. And because these are older figures being reissued, they are naturally bigger when compared to a lot of stuff that we get nowadays. Although this Megatron I believe is an upscale of a deluxe, but I'm sure you get what I mean. Size comparisons. Here's Bulkhead and Megatron next to Legacy United Animated Universe Optimus Prime, another Cybertronian Megatron, the Byway Revenge of the Fallen Megatron, a modern Transformers Prime figure, the Legacy United Thundertron, and now I kinda regret not picking up the Legacy Bulkhead. Would have been great to put next to this guy. Also, I'm voicing him in a Friends project.
It's me, Bulkhead. Where are you right now?
Comparing them to a regular 6-inch scale figure, we have the Marvel Legends Mr. Knight, and finally, the Gear Factory Wheeljack. Despite their issues, I'm still looking forward to collecting more of them. These robot modes, while flawed, are still pretty cool and charming in their own ways. The jank is a slight part of that charm. Does this carry on to the transformation and their vehicle modes though? Well, let's find out. The fusion cannon will have a place to store in alt mode, but these two blades don't have a place to store, unfortunately. Also make sure the sheath is not attached to the back, because that will prevent him from transforming fully. Pretend you didn't see that. Pretty sure the instruction just tells you to flip up the heels like this, but I prefer to bring down the entire foot into this crevice here so that it creates for a more aerodynamic look. Those are some clever transformations. I've seldom come across a figure with this much ingenuity in the modern chug line. That statement was directed mostly towards Bulkhead though, and what you end up with after all that is this mean looking monster truck mode. I've always loved this design, and the figure does a respectable job in replicating it. This is one of the meanest alt modes I've seen on a hashtag transformer. Really puts the bulk in Bulkhead. If you want to make it look even better, you get a couple of accessories to cover up some imperfections. It's not necessary, but I find it to be a welcomed addition. Really love how well he rolls too. The massive wheels provide some nice lift for the alt mode. Also, here's the weapon storage. It is worth it. Overall, a solid as hell vehicle. Megatron, meanwhile, surprisingly is as well. Look, the ugly gray still persists in this mode, but I can't deny that transformation, whilst not as good as Bulkhead's, was definitely the most solid Cybertronian Megatron transformation I've gone through. And the alt mode itself is pretty alright. Sure, it's a giant piece of nothing, but that's what he was in the show anyways. And if nothing else, this alt mode is solid, other than the fusion cannon which can just go eat, poop, and perish. And it actually feels like a cohesive mode. Bumblebee Soundwave. Nope, still not transforming it. If I have to pick out my favorite part, it'd have to be these wings and the vicious looking nose ornament. Looking like a shark almost. Huh. No wonder they redecoed this guy into a Sharktacon. And yeah, there's not much more to say, these are good to great alt modes. Bulkhead especially improves upon the robot mode by virtue of it being actually solid. Now as always, let's do some size comparisons and cap off this review. Here they are next to Animated Optimus Prime, Revenge of the Fallen Megatron, Legacy United Thundertron, Mr. Knight, and finally, Wheeljack. And there goes my review for the Gear Factory Giant Hammer and APC Toys Dark Master 2.0. Overall, whilst these don't give me as good of an experience as KO Wheeljack, I still am pretty hooked on this Prime toy line. I've come to realize that most of them will have jankiness to some degree, and you know what? That's okay. It's a part of their charm in an ironic way. And I mean, who knows? I could just be completely talking out of my booty and said Jank could turn out to be a byproduct of these being knockoffs. Either way, I'm not mad. Sure, they're not as perfect as I'd hoped they'd be, but I still enjoy them for what they are. If you don't have these molds already, now is the perfect chance for you to sample some by picking up these releases. Sure, their quality isn't as good as a knockoff company like Byway, but I still do enjoy them. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have enjoyed it, feel free to leave a like and a comment. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you all next time. I was meant to review this guy next, but then something suddenly came. Oh yeah, start me up, baby.